Wednesday, August the 20th, 2014, West Australian. Bad for Australia. Interesting article. Totally condemned by Liberal politicians, Labor politicians and Kerry Stokes, who admittedly in this article, well, he owns Channel 7, the West Australian, doesn't he? But they admitted that he has a very clear bias in that he has long-standing, Mr Stokes, 7 West Media chairman, who has had long-term commercial ties with China, said Mr Palmer had allowed his own business interests to spill over into the national interest. Allegedly, what Mr Palmer said publicly is that it won't stop the fact that the Chinese government wants to bring workers here to destroy our wage system. It won't stop the fact that they want to take over our ports and get our resources for free. So far they've shipped 200 million worth of iron ore out of this country without paying for it, and I don't mind standing up against the Chinese bastards and stopping them from doing it, and I'll be doing that, mate. Don't worry about that. We've had 3 judgments in the Federal Court, in the Supreme Court of Western Australia, and in the arbitration against these Chinese mongrels. I'm saying that's because they're communists, because they shoot their own people, they haven't got a justice system, and they want to take over this country, and we're not going to let them do it. Well, pretty much Mr Palmer is right. I pretty much agree with everything he said, because it's true. In fact, the politicians all over the world kill their own people. And it happens in Australia as well. I'll talk about that in a moment. But all the Liberal and Labor politicians that have made commentary on this have all proven that they're absolute traitors. That they will kill off the Australian-born people, the poorest of Australian-born people, at a rate, I believe, by the research evidence, between 1,200 and 1,500 a year. And then they will suck up to China for money and other nations. And that's all they care about. It is true the Chinese kill their own people. Look what they do to the Falun Gong practitioners. They kill them. They harvest their organs. They take their organs and they sell them. They sew them back up, or they kill them. There's the Falun Gong in Western Australia publicly campaign against that to teach the public here. So that's widely known that they do kill Falun Gong practitioners and harvest their organs. The Liberal Labor politicians, Greens politicians and Nationals in Australia kill Australian-born citizens as well. It happens in every nation. They kill them through political government-driven suicide. They kill Australian-born citizens through homelessness. They kill Australian-born citizens through psychiatry. And now in Western Australia they've just passed a genocidal bill, psychiatric bill, which targets children. It's horrific. And they kill Australian-born citizens in prisons. What the politicians of today have done in the past 100 years, 200 years to the Aboriginal people is genocidal. And they're continuing to do it. Also, poor white Australians they kill off. If you can't survive in our society economically, you'll end up getting locked up, drugged to death, potentially, or thrown in jail because you have no money, which they've done in Western Australia between 2008 and 2013. They jailed over 18,000 Western Australians for government-imposed economic fees and fines. People have got no money, nowhere to live, no job, and they threw them in jail. That is what the Australian politicians are doing. So Clive Palmer says this about China. To some degree it's true, but he should also look at what's happening in our own nation to our own Australian-born people, that the politicians here are doing it. And all Liberal and Labor politicians have done in this commentary is suck up to China, and because of money, because of foreign investment, they want foreign investment. They've betrayed the Australian-born people. They are traitors to the Australian-born people. They've destroyed the Australian economy, or the agriculture sector and manufacturing, and even the mining sector, and the small business sector and retail trade. It's all being destroyed because of globalisation. What Liberal and Labor pursue is globalisation, politics and economics. Destroy Australian-owned and made industries, organisations, businesses and companies, and bring in foreign investment, which is selling out Australia. They're traitors. Probably a third of the politicians in our parliaments are not Australian-born citizens. That is a way that you destroy your own nation. Who goes to another country and lives in another country and becomes a politician in that country and destroy the rights of the Australian-born people, or the people born in that nation, And that's what they do. And people come here, people like Nayan, the West Australian Treasurer, Dr. Nayan. He's not even Australian, he's from America, and he's the Treasurer of the state. It's absolutely appalling. Only Australian people born in Australia should be able to become politicians. So Liberal and Labor have historically always got together with the corporate media to destroy anyone with a voice. They try to destroy me. They destroyed Pauline Hanson. They destroyed Clive Palmer. Anybody who tries to have a strong political, economic, educational or social voice, they get together and they destroy you. They'll even they throw you in jail or destroy you economically or even try and kill people. And that's what they do. It happens in Australia. So these people, Liberal, Labor, Greens, Nationals politicians, are corrupt as anything. And they will do everything to destroy Mr. Palmer, even though he dumped me as a candidate. And of course, I'm upset about that. Of course I am. Because together we could have worked together and done a lot more for the Australian people than he needed people. He needs people like me. I'm not afraid to speak out about all issues. You know, they can threaten me, they can engage violence against me, which they've done. They can steal from me and try and throw me in jail, which they've already done one night. But they're going to burn in hell, all those political and government men doing that to me. And all the crimes that they engage against Australian-born people, they steal off the Australian-born people through the public trust, through the councils, through the sheriff's office, and through the police. They use the police and the sheriff's office to raise revenue violently and destructively to raise revenue. It's stealing of the public. That Fines Act of 1994 is a stealing act. They extort the amounts up 560% on original fines. That's not allowed in the Act. And also they allow the sheriff's office to take seizure of property or assets without any court hearing, and on their paperwork they put Perth Magistrates Court, but they don't provide a hearing. That's exactly what the Nazis did. They stole money and assets of people without court hearings. So they're doing exactly the same in Western Australia. They defrauding the Commonwealth through the public trust. They're killing people with psychiatry and stealing their assets and their money. They're doing that through the public trust. They use the Magistrates Court like a bank. They're stealing through the Magistrates Court. And they're jailing the poorest people in Australia through the Magistrates Courts. The Magistrates Courts in Australia should be shut down and they should be converted to human rights courts for Australian-born citizens. Because what they're doing with the Magistrates Court is genocidal. And they're doing it to the Aboriginal people like a rubber stamp. They've been doing it for decades. I worked in a women's prison, in the prison system in Western Australia between 2006-2007 for 1 year. Well, I'm a teacher. I'm registered to teach for 18 years. I was born in Western Australia. I have a Master of Education. I've written 4 books of non-fiction literature. I do an enormous amount of research on all sorts of issues. I think I know what I'm talking about. And my registration as a teacher is current to the end of 2016. That's now already 18 years I've been registered to teach. But I did this job for a year as an officer in the women's prison, mostly in the women's prison. But I got to look at the juvenile prison, the men's prisons, and worked mostly in the women's prison. Probably about 80% of the women there shouldn't be there. And the amount of people that they have locked up, poor people, Australian-born citizens, for nothing or minor reasons, and a lot of government-imposed economic fees and fines, throw them in jail, they can't pay, throw them in jail. Massive human rights abuses, and hundreds of them die. They die from despair and suicide, drugs. The politicians need to create jobs for Australian-born citizens, but what they do is they throw them in jail. If you can't survive economically, that's it. You get locked up in a psychiatric facility, drugged, or locked up in a prison, they drug you in prison as well. Very dangerous. It's like Nazism. Australia is actually governed as a Nazi country, federally and state. Politicians run this country like a Nazi country. There's no rights in the courts for their citizens. There's very few rights provisions in our constitution. They use the police for violence and brutality and to steal and to kill as well. There was a Royal Commission report in 2008 in Western Australia which proves a 1,000-page, $30 million Royal Commission report that spanned 20 years, that was done under Jeff Gallop. which proved that the police, over a 20-year period, had murdered people, raped women, engaged in drug trafficking, engaged in treason, had stolen and fraud, all sorts of crimes that they had done. So I don't think that men should be police officers anymore, and I certainly don't think they deserve to be politicians, unless they're on my team, unless they're supporting my work. Because their crimes against women and children will never be forgiven. I don't think they don't deserve to be forgiven at all. So he comments about China, and they go, oh, don't upset the Chinese. Well, it's true, they could take over. Isn't their military about the size of our population? So they could easily take over. And the way the politicians, Liberal Labor politicians, are allowing them to buy land, assets and resources, not just the Chinese, but the Indians and other foreigners, and 38% of new housing purchases, housing development purchases are to foreigners. Well, that's the politicians' fault, isn't it? But in 2012 we had 105,000 homeless Australians. A lot of those Australian-born citizens would have died. So they are killing off the Australian-born people and bringing in foreigners to vote for them and giving off the land, assets and resources for nothing, cheaply. So he's right. He's right. And all you cowards out there, political cowards and media cowards who continue to spew out the garbage of Liberal and Labor politicians since the Second World War, or since the First World War. All their corruption has been building up for decades since the First World War with Labor and since the Second World War with both Liberal and Labor. And all the owners and editors of the commercial television networks and the newspapers, like Kerry Stokes, are just as guilty. You're just as guilty because you've allowed all these Australian-born people to die, and all you do is spew out the garbage and promote the corruption of Liberal and Labor politicians, particularly since the Second World War. And people come along like Pauline Hanson and Clive Palmer and myself, and all you want to do is destroy them, because you will destroy people to maintain your political and economic power over this country. And that makes Australia a Nazi country, where you can kill and steal and lie to the public and destroy their lives and rights. Innocent people and some of the poorest people in our nation, you can do it, and that makes you evil and satanic and corrupt and violent. And that is the sort of thing the Nazis did throughout Europe. And it's even worse today because it happens on a global scale with politicians throughout the entire world, doesn't it? They can lock you up, drug you to death, kill you, deprive you of your liberty for as long as they want, use the police to brutalise people and kill people and make them homeless and steal. They do it all over the world. So let's have a look at what's happening in our own backyard. Let's have a look at what the Liberal Labor politicians, Greens and Nationals have been doing to the Australian-born people since the First World War. Let's not forget about the Chinese. My message to China is turn around, take your eyes off Australia and put your eyes onto Israel. Because your destiny is to protect Israel from northern invaders. That's what your destiny is. Turn around, take your eyes off Australia, turn around, turn to Israel, and your destiny is to protect Israel from satanic northern invaders. So let's have a look at what's happening in our own backyard to the poor people here. And the guilt and blame is with Liberal, Labor, Greens and Nationals politicians. Thank you very much.